On this week's episode, we talk about our early impressions of the Steam Deck OLED, the current state of the Knights of the Old Republic remake, The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered being officially revealed, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's surprisingly short exclusivity window, Sony is being sued for $7.9 billion, and more. All of that tonight, but first, on to that beautiful bean intro. Welcome to the place where PC and console gaming talk combine. This is the Orange Box Podcast, Episode 7. I am your host, the man whose life story was written by Hideo Kojima, Nathan, also known as the Frozen Gamer 87. And joining me is the man whose life story was written by Tetsuya Nomura, my co-host, Justin, better known as I Am Zarek. How you doing today?
I am doing quite well. It's been an interesting week, and I think the first thing I'll say is that I did my homework this week. I watched Super Mario Brothers movie.
Okay, and?
I heard it was good. I simply didn't realize how much I actually would enjoy it, especially considering how much of a cold-hearted person I am toward Nintendo. I think that movie really just warmed my heart in a lot of ways.
Good.
Watching that movie was like when I first saw the original Lego movie in theaters, just because it was such a fun film. Mm-hmm. It's something that I would have loved to have seen as a child, and seeing it now, it still was great. I loved all the references in the film, from something that was maybe a little more obscure, something that a lot of people have recognized or seen, hearing the music from the games throughout the movie. I thought that the voice acting was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
The story, it wasn't complicated, but it was still something that was pretty decent. So I had a good time with it. I'll be honest, I had a good time with it. It definitely trumps every adaptation film that I've seen so far. It's trumped Sonic the Hedgehog. It's trumped Detective Pikachu. Only thing I would say, and this is because it's technically not a film adaptation, but because there are references, that's why I sort of categorize it as a video game movie. I'm not certain if it beats Wreck-It Ralph for me, but I feel like it's so close there that I would have to watch both of them one after the other and then determine which I actually like more. But the fact that it easily cleared every other video game movie that I've seen before, so kudos there.
Well, I'm really glad to hear that you enjoyed it. The one thing that makes me not like Wreck-It Ralph as much is Sarah Silverman, because I can't stand her. She is. It doesn't matter how much she tries to make her voice sound cutesy, she still sounds like Sarah Silverman. That constant demeaning, like, I'm better than you. I can't think of what the word is that I'm trying to think of that describes her, but it's. I guess you could say it rhymes with witch. But that's not the word I'm actually thinking of, though. I'm trying to think of what it is.
Condescending?
Yes, condescending. That's at least one of them. I'm not sure if that's the one I was thinking of, but either way, yes. Yeah, I can't stand her. And I will say, probably like my one gripe with the Mario movie is, even though Peach has some explanation for why she's as capable as she is, the fact that she grew up in the Mushroom Kingdom and everything, she's just grown up knowing how all this stuff works, and so all that, she's still a little too much of a girl boss. And like, I think about it, if I met someone like her in real life, I would not want to be in any way attached to her the way that Mario is supposed to be, because I still think she's too much of that girl power thing. And I don't know. I'm not going to get into that. But Anything else about your week?
Yeah, so I bought a PS5 controller since
Okay.
those are starting to be on sale now.
Nice.
And I got it just because I've been using a Switch Pro controller over on Linux just because that's the only one that's worked. My Xbox controller, I haven't figured out how to get that to work.
Gotcha.
I heard that the PS5 one works, so I tried that. It took me a while to understand that I didn't necessarily need to pair it with Linux. As long as I have Steam up, it automatically connects and works. So right out of the box, and actually 2 of the games that I sent you video game footage of were actually played with the DualSense controller. So it works pretty well. I think the only thing that I have to actually get to work is to actually figure out how to get to work wirelessly, because for some reason it's still not connecting or showing up. It shows up, but it just doesn't connect, and so I've been only playing it wired. So
Okay.
I'm just gonna see if I can get that to work later on. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I will say one thing that could potentially be what you need to do with your Xbox controller, because I had to do this because mine stopped working the other day with both my PC and my Steam Deck, was just opening up the Xbox application or even going to their site and updating the firmware for the controller.
Okay. Okay.
That's what I had to do for that. That should theoretically fix the problem. I mean, granted, I haven't tried it in like Linux proper. I've only done it with the Steam Deck and then, of course, normally on PC. But yeah, that theoretically should fix the problem. So,
Okay.
but what do you think of the DualSense? How do you like it?
Not bad. I haven't used anything that technically uses it to its full capabilities.
Right.
I mean, I've fiddled around with the touchpad just because that sort of works as a mouse. So it works there. I'm glad to be able to use analog triggers though, because that's one of the reasons why I wanted to get at least use an Xbox, or if not do that, get a DualSense, because I really wish that Nintendo used analog triggers instead of using digital. So, but I mean, overall it's fine. I mean, it doesn't feel wrong. It doesn't feel bad, like, to hold. I mean, it's been a while since I've used a PlayStation controller. I think the last one I used probably was, or at least what I've owned, was just the PS1.
Wow.
That's a lot. I mean, I've played PS2 controllers at friends' house and stuff like that, but as far as just what I personally played, it was the PS1.
Gotcha.
So I mean, it works. It does a good job. So I mean, I don't have any complaints. It'll be interesting though to see because I think that I read that Sony actually did allow, or they did provide certain drivers, so the haptic feedback is supported in Steam. So it'll be interesting to actually try a game that uses that haptic feedback, especially with, or at least with the triggers, and see how that works and feels, because I've heard it's good. I don't know if it's really much of a gimmick per se, or if it's something that actually could be useful in the future of gaming.
Yeah. So I have a DualSense as well. I bought it, I don't know, like probably a year and a half ago, and I use it whenever I play the PlayStation titles, just because I don't know, it feels a little more natural for the most part, unless I'm playing on the Steam Deck, in which case, that doesn't matter. But the haptic feedback, honestly, it ends up being very similar to HD Rumble. It's not drastically different, in my opinion. The adaptive triggers are interesting. I think it's cool that it can do that, because like the game where I really like made use of that was in Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, and so like certain guns, what it will have is that it'll like stop halfway through to do like a basic like one attack on a gun, and then if you pull it all the way, then it will do, a different attack with the gun. And it's kind of cool how it stops like that, but at the same time, it's also kind of annoying, and it just feels like it's more of a gimmick than anything else. I know that, PlayStation fans think that's heresy that I'm saying that, but and granted, I didn't play a ton of the game that way because I got it like right before I went on a trip, and so I ended up playing the majority of that game on Steam Deck. And Steam Deck handles it differently because it doesn't have those adaptive triggers. Some cases it's just literally holding down the left trigger and then using the right trigger in order to get the same functionality. But I found that it just wasn't like something where I wasn't blown away by it. I kind of just found it to be okay. This is okay. I'll see if I like it any better, like when I get to playing Horizon Forbidden West next year, after that comes to PC. But I don't know. Cool. Anything else?
No, those have been pretty much the highlights, except for what we'll talk about later. But yeah,
right, yeah, of course. So my week has been pretty busy. Lots of stuff at work and all that. This past weekend, we had to basically get the house fully cleaned because we're hosting for Thanksgiving tomorrow at the time of recording. And so, of course, with the way that we had to do it was our living room is hardwood floor, and we have like we have 3 full-size couches, one of which is a recliner couch, and then a recliner love seat, and then a couple of recliners besides that. And so we had to move those out of the way, and then basically we swept everything from underneath those into a pile in the middle of our living room. So there's just like trash and toys and other random stuff because, it's 3 young kids and, lots of dog hair and everything else. And then, of course, just random stuff from like around the edges because it's pretty much open floor plan for our house. And, we spent the whole day going through that, and then, all the other cleaning stuff that my wife and I needed to do separately between dishes and whatnot. And we've had issues off and on with fleas in our house, which are, it's one thing having it happen to the pets, but it's another thing when they get in bedding, and it sucks. Now, I've never experienced first-hand bed bugs. I mean, like, I worked at a hotel for years, so I know what to look out for with those and everything. I've never had to deal with them, but fleas are just, it's miserable. Because the biggest problem with them is that they're tiny, and, like half the time you don't even see them, but you wake up super itchy. And I mean, there was like a period of time where I actually was the only one who was waking up itchy. And I thought that it was something wrong with, something I was doing. Like, is it a dietary thing? Is it like I'm suddenly having an allergic reaction to the detergent that we're using for washing the sheets? Or, what is it? And then eventually I actually saw one of the fleas, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a flea. And then in time, they ended up spreading all over the house, and we were all dealing with them. We were able to, at one point, get rid of them through meticulous vacuuming and spraying. And they were gone for a while, but then they came back earlier this year. And I don't remember when it was that they came back, but so I had to spend a bunch of time over the weekend and up through today doing a bunch of vacuuming and spraying to hopefully completely get rid of them again. And it's just a matter of doing what we can to see if we can keep that up and hopefully just not have them come back again, because they're terrible. So yeah, all of that being said, we've been able to keep the house clean since the weekend, and tomorrow people are coming over. most of the stuff is prepped. The turkey's brining right now. We'll be ready to go for putting in the smoker tomorrow. And we don't have a whole lot of cooking we have to do tomorrow because we've done a lot of the stuff we needed to do ahead of time. Speaking of which, so the things that I am making, of course, I'm smoking a turkey, which I've done it the past 2 years before this, and it's amazing. It's so good, so juicy and flavorful and fantastic. Although that does remind me I need to put more smoker chips in the smoker. But anyway, and we stuffed the turkey with stuffing, which I know not everybody likes it. The really wet stuffing, but when you get the turkey juices in there, it just makes the stuffing so much better. But then I'm also making a cornbread stuffing with homemade smoked bacon, as well as smoked bell peppers, and I can't remember what else I usually put in. I think it's usually I do chicken broth and a little bit of sage, and I can't remember anything else. A lot of times I just kind of fake it because I don't have an actual recipe. I just make it. So, and then my wife made a pumpkin roll, which is delicious, and my sisters and their families are bringing various things as well. And we have some friends bringing some stuff too. And one of my favorite things for Thanksgiving morning. This is a tradition that was started, I think 2017 is when we started it. We got this recipe from friends. Super simple. It's just crescent rolls, like the ones you get out of a tube. If I could make them from scratch, I would, but I haven't been able to figure out how to do that properly. And then you stuff them with a mixture of breakfast sausage and cream cheese.
Huh.
And it's it's not good for you, but it's so delicious. It's so incredibly delicious. My kids love them, and we always do them for Thanksgiving and Christmas every year. So
I'm gonna have to make a note of this right now, just for later.
It's super good. And then we have a different appetizer that, but both of these are things that we got from a friend back in 2016. But it's a feta artichoke dip. Artichoke hearts and feta and red bell peppers, and it's just a really creamy, delicious dip. And then you do it with wheat thins or whatever kind of cracker you like, and it's it's good stuff. Appetizers to hold us over until dinner time, and probably eat way too many of them. But that's the fun thing about Thanksgiving, is being able to enjoy all the good food. Anyway, I obviously went way off on a tangent. I'm ready for Thanksgiving, though. Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays, for sure. Christmas will be even better because Christmas I get 2 weeks off. You can pay time off and all that, so that'll be fun. But anyway, what have you been playing this past week?
All right, so one of the games I've been playing is Ultimate Spider-Man. It's a game that I honestly, when I first played the game back in 2005, I played the Game Boy Advance version. That's actually what a lot of my friends did. We played the Game Boy Advance version, and to be honest, looking at just the cover of the box art, I definitely would feel intimidated playing the console/PC versions, but playing it years later, I realized this is kind of fun. This is definitely fun. It definitely is one of the, I guess, it's definitely one of the better Spider-Man games that released ever. Especially going back and forth, playing as both Spider-Man and Venom throughout the game.
Mm-hmm.
And originally when I recorded the gameplay footage, I was doing that specifically for a video, just because the topic actually was about Venom, particularly the Let There Be Carnage film.
Gotcha.
But the game is fun. It's decent. The problem is, though, if you can easily find it on console, you can look for it on eBay or Amazon, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But finding a PC version is definitely going to be difficult. I had a hard time trying to get this copy that I did. But still, I think it's pretty good. Other games I've played, was Elden Ring. That was actually one of the games that I was testing on with my DualSense controller. It's a game that I need to get back into, and I'll definitely do that once I finish Sekiro. And I definitely need to do that because playing this again after taking a break from it and playing Sekiro, I need to get readjusted to the controls because I really am playing too much or thinking about too much like Sekiro and not as my usual Souls type of game. So that's definitely something that I'll need to adjust to once I get back into once I finish Sekiro and play Elden Ring.
Right.
But last game that I've played, and this actually you inspired me to play this, was Katamari Damacy Reroll, and I do agree that the tank controls are definitely a bit awkward. It's definitely still fun. I definitely enjoyed it, and I'm now trying to see if I can get the last 2 achievements in the game. Those 2 are definitely the hardest because you need to essentially find every gift, which is in, I think, most of the stages. But then you also need to roll up every single item. And yeah, it's not that you need to roll them all up at once, but you need to at least roll them up in one playthrough at least one time. So those 2 are going to be quite interesting to get through.
Yeah, that achievement kind of reminds me of something that was not actually an achievement, but it was something that I was doing just because I wanted to. So have you ever played Untitled Goose Game?
I haven't. I've definitely heard of it, but I haven't played it.
Oh, you would love it. It's fantastic. It's basically just you're like a jerk goose the whole time, and it's fantastic. I mean, like, I played it on Switch. It's also on PC, of course. Fantastic game. It's not very long. It's hilarious. The visual style is fantastic. Just the music goes well with it. All that. So there are you can with the goose, you can actually move just about any environmental object. At least, I mean, basically anything that isn't tied down, you can move it. And so after I had fully completed the game, I just decided, you know what, I'm going to take every loose item from every area of this whole town and move it back to the goose's headquarters. And I did this for a while. I don't have any of the footage recorded. I did stream that. What was that? Probably 2019 or 2020. And yeah, I mean, it was. I never actually finished doing it, and then when I came back to the game after having closed it out, unfortunately, it didn't keep all the items that I had already moved, and I moved like 2 or 3 areas worth of items over. So I was like, okay, I'm not gonna try doing this again. But who knows? Maybe someday I'll do it just for fun. But yeah, anyway. Anything else you've been playing? Or do you want to? Well, I guess we can talk about the Steam Deck stuff after. But
yeah, we can talk about that with that.
All right. So games that I've been playing this past week. Obviously, I've been working some more on Metal Gear Solid 5. I don't remember exactly how much I played of it. It wasn't as much as I would have liked. It just basically I got, let's see here, what was it? I don't know, there was just a few things that kept me from spending as much time on it. Oh yeah, that's right, because today's only Wednesday. I keep forgetting. Yeah, it's just been one of those weeks. But basically what happened was that I since Saturday was so busy, I when we got to Sunday, I was normally Saturday's like my day to just rest, to do nothing. But because we had all the cleaning that needed to get done, we just decided, okay, it's going to be easier to do that on Saturday because we have stuff already planned for Sunday, with church. And then we had like our 1-year anniversary of the church lunch thing. And so we just knew that we weren't going to have as much time to work on all that. So we did everything on Saturday, and then Sunday, as soon as we got home from church, it was just being vegetables for the day. But what I wanted to do was, I kind of wanted to play something a little different, and it wasn't like I was burnt out on Metal Gear Solid. I'm still fully invested. I'm wanting to play lots of it, but because I should back up. I had basically given into the hype and decided that I would go and buy myself Persona 5 Tactica for the Switch. Because of course, even though it would look fantastic on PC in and of itself, the reality is that I wanted the cartridge because I already had both Persona 5 Royal and Persona 5 Strikers on the Switch. And I didn't start playing Tactica, but I did decide to play Strikers. So there will be footage here both for handheld and docked mode for this. But yeah, like I had bought Strikers on sale a year or two ago and just never really played much of any. I played like maybe an hour before, but I just decided on a whim, since I had gotten Tactica, that I wanted to go ahead and give Strikers a chance. And so I was playing that for a bit, and that's one that's, for the most part, kid friendly. I mean, there's some language and that sort of thing, but there, most of the combat, doesn't have like anything objectionable to where I'm worried about my kids watching me play. So they were watching me play that a bit, and some things I'll say about it. Of course, it looks great on the Switch OLED screen. The frame rate is kind of mixed. Most of the time, it maintains 30 frames per second really well. There's like random spots where it seems like it jumps up to 60. So I think maybe the frame rate is uncapped or something, even though it just aims for 30 most of the time. And then occasionally during combat, because this is very... the combat in general is more like Warriors style, where it is lots and lots of enemies on screen all at once, but not quite as exhausting as Hyrule Warriors and most of the regular Warriors games. This one has more refined gameplay that kind of takes the Warriors formula and then mixes it with Persona in such a way that it feels like it is just as much Persona as it is Warriors, if that makes sense. If you watch the gameplay, you'll probably get at least some idea of that. So I had played a decent amount of that in handheld mode, and in dock mode, I was surprised. It actually looks quite a bit better. Like the main thing I think that was a problem in handheld mode was the anti-aliasing was just not great on it, and it's significantly better in docked mode for that. But I played it both ways a bit just because it was a good one for my kids to watch. So I probably put like maybe 6-7 hours over the past several days, something like that. Most of it on Sunday after church, and but it's a pretty fun game. I mean, it still has some of the same issues where it's kind of like where it gets a little too repetitive, and I definitely think that the combat, while it's for the most part significantly better than most of the Warriors stuff, or at least than Hyrule Warriors, it still has some of that same fatigue element where you just kind of get tired of dealing with particularly the boss fights, because the boss fights, you basically just have bullets, or, well, not really bullet sponges, but like sword sponges. I mean, they're just like, you just feel like you're constantly trying to hit them, and they're not as fun and inventive as they are in the main version of Persona 5 and Persona 5 Royal. Mostly just because of the fact that you have to be moving a lot more. You have to be moving, whereas in those, they're entirely turn-based. So it's like you have some of the same like uniqueness in a sense, but because of the fact that you're having to mix it with the warrior style gameplay, it ends up not feeling as memorable, I guess you could say. So, but then the last thing I played, apart from the stuff I tested out on the Steam Deck OLED today, was some Red Dead Redemption. I just, I don't remember how much I played of that. Probably like a couple hours last night. And it's just been... It's been good to play that one a little bit more, too. One thing I did get to do that was just sort of unrelated to the games, but at the same time was related because I was playing both Metal Gear Solid and Persona 5 Strikers at times while watching this. We started going through Lord of the Rings again. So we did Fellowship over a couple nights, and then we did most of the first part of Two Towers before, because we're doing the extended versions, obviously.
Yes.
Where we did most of the first part before I got tired and needed to go to sleep, but we'll probably go through the rest of those before the weekend's over, since we got a long weekend. So yeah, that's all good stuff. But anyway, anything else?
Actually, one question I actually would say. So is Strikers a pseudo sequel to Persona 5 / Royal, or is that just its own?
It is technically a sequel to Persona 5, the base version. And I think it is supposed to be essentially canonical. The thing about Persona, about these Persona games, is usually the spin-offs, when they do something that's canonical, that's supposed to be a sequel, the story always feels so much lesser than the original game, and kind of makes it feel a little anticlimactic. You know, after you have like the firm ending of the main game, and then you tack on a sequel that is a completely different style of gameplay and everything else. And, that's the same with this one. I will say the story's starting to get a little more interesting, but it's definitely not. It still feels a lot like been there, done that. So, but it's still fun, and you know, it's like I like some of these games to some degree. The only other like sequel that I really kind of got into was Persona 5 Q on the 3DS, which I grabbed when it was on sale digitally some time ago. I never got the physical version, unfortunately, before that got discontinued and is ridiculously expensive. So, yeah. Alright, so I guess we can go ahead and take this opportunity to jump into the news, unless you have something else.
No, sir.
So let's start off with talking about the Steam Deck OLED, which both of us got today. I knew mine was coming today. Justin did not know his was coming today, and so I'm going to let you take it away and start off with your impressions of the thing, and if you want to display it up on camera,
Sure.
cool as well. Display my beautiful, yeah, it, of course, because of the background blurring, it makes it much more difficult to see, but
yeah.
Damon X Machina.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely was surprised to get this originally, especially since, for one thing, this is the limited edition, and Valve said that should be coming actually later than the standard versions. So it was 1 to 2 weeks, whereas the standard ones were 3 to 5 days. But then it shipped shortly after yours shipped out, and then I got a message saying that it was going to be arriving Thursday. I thought, that's cool. It's going to be here before the weekend, so that's going to be some good time to start testing it out, especially since I won't be working on Friday. But then received a message earlier today saying, hey, it's actually out for delivery. I'm thinking, that doesn't sound right. It was come Friday. So came home, had this, and I thought, wow, that's a nice surprise. I haven't done too much with this. I've of course, set it up. Did some downloads. Now, one thing I didn't even notice at first when I was looking at it and comparing with my regular Steam Deck was the actual screen, because I am not accustomed to OLED displays. It wasn't only until shortly after looking at sort of some of the, especially for the displays of some, or of like the images for the games. So for example, I think I have it pulled up on here. Like, let me, yeah, like so. For example, oops, like both of these, well, again, the blur, but for Daemon X Machina, like, it's definitely a whole lot brighter on the OLED version, and I didn't even notice that sort of thing happen at first. So I am sort of starting to see why you like it so much, because of the different colors. I definitely will want to tinker around later on with the refresh rate, especially since this one can actually get 90 FPS. Of course, it won't be anything too new, but with some older games, some indie games, those should definitely be able to get 90 FPS, so that'll be cool to see. I also tried doing some transfer via my computer, instead of just doing it directly downloading from Steam servers. I think, unfortunately though, my router is capping my transfer speeds, because it's not too much of a difference, I would say, than if I were transferring to my standard Steam Deck. So that is currently the downside of that. But and I haven't played too much, but I will say though that actually no, I will say one thing is that I did try a little bit of Sekiro on there, and primarily just to see how it sounded as far as with the fan speed, because it's not that it was obnoxious with the standard Steam Deck, but I want to see if it would be a little bit quieter, and it does seem to be slightly quieter. So I do think that the cooling system that they have on this one is better and noticeable. And also, I didn't think I even would really notice this, but I did notice that it was actually, that the actual deck was physically lighter to hold.
Definitely.
And I think that's pretty interesting. And I honestly, it's something that is neat, but I think it's something that Valve didn't necessarily need to do, because I don't think that the standard deck was really all that heavy. I mean, it had some weight to it, but felt, I guess, like useful weight. It's not something that felt sort of like if you buy a third-party PlayStation 2 controller where you don't feel anything in there, and but it felt like there was enough weight to it that felt like a firm product. But I think that the OLED is fine with the way it feels. And one thing that I definitely love is the fact that the cable is longer. That's something that was one of my biggest complaints, I guess I would say, with the original ones, because if I'm in bed and I need to actually charge the Steam Deck, I have to be pretty much near the edge of the bed just so I can play and charge at the same time. Whereas with this one, it's long enough where I can be comfortable and yet still be playing. So I do like that.
Yeah. Any other thoughts before I get into mine?
Nothing so far. Like, you might say something that triggers something that I thought about, but I haven't been delving too much into it to give, I guess, a full analysis. But that's just my thoughts so far.
Okay. Well, okay, so I'll start off with a few things. Of course, the very first thing I noticed when I picked this thing up is just how much lighter it felt. Like, I was actually shocked, because I figured it was going to be one of those things where they say it's lighter, and it's like, oh, maybe it's a couple grams lighter, and you can't even notice it. But it's like, I picked it up and I was like, wow, that thing is way lighter. And I mean, obviously, it's just because they changed the internals, and it just kind of worked out that way. I don't know if they necessarily were aiming for it to be lighter, but yeah, I mean, it's noticeably lighter, and I think that's pretty cool. Like you, I was never bothered by the weight of the LCD Steam Deck either, but still thought it was kind of a cool bonus. I do. I think I actually really like this. I mean, obviously, mine's just the regular 1 TB. I didn't go with the limited edition. I like the black accent on the sticks. Um, I think that actually looks pretty cool. Like, I wasn't sure what I would think about it, but now that I actually have it and am looking at it, I like the way it looks. I do like the sticks are definitely better than on the base Steam Deck. They're a little more indented, and so it's just kind of like easier to keep your thumbs on there. I like that a lot. I think one of my favorite things right now, and this is relatively minor, but it's still great, is the Steam and options buttons are just they're so much better. I mean, they're still fairly flush with the system, but when you press them in, they just have a little more travel distance, and so it feels more. I mean, like when you press it, it doesn't feel. It feels like you're actually doing something, whereas before it was always just kind of like I never really liked that. That was probably my biggest gripe in terms of just the overall hardware itself. I never liked that. I haven't played enough to where I can like say 100% how I feel about all of it yet, because I'm just, I basically just kind of dabbled with it for a little bit since I was pretty busy today, but overall, like, I'm already pretty happy with it. It does seem like in general things are more responsive. The operating system is a little or at least accessing different things in the operating system, it feels like there's less lag than there was before, so that's pretty nice. So that's my thoughts as far as the actual hardware, like the outward hardware. Obviously the screen is fantastic. I mean, it's noticeably so much brighter, and you get a lot more color and everything else with that OLED display, so I'm really happy with that. As far as what I've had a chance to test out, I only actually downloaded one game so far, which was Starfield. Initially, it was trying to transfer it from my PC, and it was just going to take way too long, so I just downloaded it instead. I'm not sure I really noticed the difference in the download speeds, but that's probably my router more than anything else. But I still was able to download that and test it out a little bit. I think it's a little better on performance, but not anything significantly noticeable, at least not for Starfield. But I did also stream Starfield from my computer, and that definitely was better. That actually gave me an opportunity to test out the official DLSS that they added in, and it definitely makes a difference. I was getting consistent 60 FPS, which is something I couldn't say before. Like, a lot of times I would be down in the 40s. Granted, I didn't test New Atlantis, which is one of the more demanding areas, so I'll have to test that out and see how it does with that. But like, I have actively avoided DLSS on other games because of the fact that most of the time I felt like it wasn't enough of an improvement to where it was helpful. I'd rather just adjust the settings a little bit, go for the high frame rate. But with this, it definitely was noticeable. But I did have, I did already have a 1 TB micro SD that I just grabbed from my other Steam Deck and punched in here, so I have a bunch of games pre-installed. So I briefly hopped into Metal Gear Solid 5. Mostly just because I wanted to see if it could go above 60 FPS, and it wasn't. It was just 60, solid 60, which is perfectly fine. I tested a little bit of Doom 2016, which, man, that looks fantastic on this. Like, it already looks and runs great on the base Steam Deck, but on here, I tweaked the settings a little bit, and I was able to get it to where it could get up to 90 at times. More often than not, it was around 70 to 80 was what it was getting to with the settings that I had it set on. But of course, it's such a fantastic game. I haven't tried out Doom Eternal on here because I just haven't booted it up on PC at all. I played all of the base game on Switch, and a little bit of the DLC, but that was all before the Steam Deck came out, so I never had a chance. I just haven't gotten around to doing that. I want to finish going all the way through Doom 2016 on PC/Steam Deck before I play Eternal that way. But probably at some point, maybe during Christmas break will probably be the easiest time. I want to do a video with overhead comparisons of playing some of these games on the Switch OLED versus the Steam Deck OLED, because there's definitely, I mean, obviously there's going to be a difference because Switch is much weaker than the Steam Deck, but it'll still be kind of cool seeing the difference on something that's a little better comparison, because up until this point, the Switch just had, at least the OLED version of the Switch, had a much better screen, even though it was a little bit lower resolution and obviously much less powerful. But like games like Hades, which up to this point, up until the OLED Steam Deck came out, would be run at 60 frames per second both on the Switch and the Steam Deck. I actually kind of preferred playing it on the Switch because it was same frame rate. It obviously it looked a little better on the Steam Deck, but the main reason why I liked playing better on the Switch was because of the screen. And now with this screen that's both OLED and a higher refresh rate, I was able to get 90 frames per second, no problem. I didn't go into combat, so I'll have to test it when it gets to that point. But that game is really well optimized. I mean, that's probably the only game on PC where I can actually get 240 frames per second because I have a 240 hertz monitor. So, or at least that's the only one I can think of specifically that I've been able to get and maintain that frame rate. But yeah, and then I also tested out a little bit of Elden Ring. When you sent me that gameplay, I was like, I haven't jumped into Elden Ring in a while. I want to see how it looks and everything on the Steam Deck. And I think actually it's got a little bit of a performance improvement from playing on the Steam Deck. And it may just be the area I was in, because I was in Caelid, very early on when you're in the first area. I can't remember what it's called.
Limgrave?
Yes. Yes. When you're there, there's like this chest in the ruins near the dragon, and if you open it up, then it transports you to Caelid into like some mines and stuff. And before it even occurred to me that I could actually use fast travel to get back to that area, I had spent a bunch of time in Caelid, not in the mine. I had to just run out of there because I kept dying constantly. And then there's this town, I can't remember what it's called, but it's like a town that has a bunch of like the ghost people in it, and you like light torches and stuff to proceed. But I had basically I had been testing there, so that because I had learned well enough where all the enemies were to where I spent a lot of time grinding there previously. I still suck at Elden Ring, but it looks great on the Steam Deck, and I've actually been able, at least in that town, I was able to get and maintain 40 frames per second really well, which was nice. So that's pretty cool. I played a little bit more with the changing the frame and refresh rate. When you do 40 frames per second, it does 80 hertz rather than 40 hertz, which works fine because it's evenly divided in half, so it works out just fine. They don't, even though you can split them again. Right now, by default, they are just one. They just have the two combined, and it will default to what the best thing is for that. When you split it, you can't get down to 40 hertz, though. You can only, the lowest you can go is 45. So, let's see here. Jumped into the Outer Worlds a little bit, and that is specifically Outer Worlds, not Outer Wilds. Kind of fiddled around with that. That one's a little harder to get a good balance between frame rate and visuals for me, so I ended up going for 40 FPS because even though I could get it up to 60, it was just a little more blurry than I like. I mean, not as bad as the Switch version. The Switch version's very, very blurry and low frame rate. But I did mess around with that a little bit. Like initially I started it up and I didn't realize it had defaulted to all like very high settings, and so I was like, wow, this looks really good. But it was only running at like 29 frames per second. It's like, that's not okay. I'm not okay with that. So anyway, I played like maybe 10 minutes of that. Mostly was just kind of wandering around and messing with the settings to try to get a frame rate I was content with. But then I also tested out control a little bit, and it runs about the same as it does on the base Steam Deck. Pretty consistent 40 FPS, and for that game, it works fine. It's a great game. I enjoy that a lot. But yeah, so I did have a chance to test out a bunch of games just because I already had them installed. I have a bunch more that I could test out as well. I'll probably try to get footage for some of these, but it's not going to be all of them because there's just quite a few, and I don't know how I would even compile them in when it comes to the video version. So we'll see what happens. And also, I'm not going to necessarily have a lot of time tomorrow to do all that before I edit. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, that's basically everything I have to say about the Steam Deck OLED so far. Any other thoughts on that?
Actually, I do have one question. So since the 1 terabyte version is the anti-glare etch screen, what are your thoughts on that, especially comparing that to the Nintendo Switch OLED? How does that look to you?
Well, I didn't get a chance to check them out side by side yet, but it didn't seem to be an issue. Like, I know that technically it is, like you don't get as much of the brightness of the OLED with the anti-glare screen, but like it's such a dramatic difference, such a dramatic improvement over the base LCD Steam Deck that I just noticed how much brighter and beautiful it looked, and didn't notice anything else. And I already know that the anti-glare screen works well when it comes to dealing with like sunlight and that sort of thing when traveling, so I'm perfectly all right with it. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. I was just curious since it is something that just popped into the back of my mind as you were talking about the Switch, and I was thinking, oh wait, yeah, this actually has a anti-glare screen, which people mentioned that affects the brightness. So I was just curious on your thoughts in there.
Yeah, I think what I'll probably have to do is I think whenever I do like comparison videos, I will put my Switch and my Steam Deck like right next to each other, and then boot up the same game at the same time, and then play a little bit of the game on one, and then play a little bit of that same game on the other, and that way you get a good comparison of how they look side by side and everything. But anyway, yeah, good times. All right, so the next topic we have here is the Knights of the Old Republic remake. So we've talked about this a bit before. I think it was on one of our attempts at the first episode, so it may or may not have actually been heard by any listeners, but the gist of it is, so the Knights of the Old Republic remake was announced as a PlayStation exclusive back in, I believe, 2021. Since then, there has basically been going through essentially development hell. It's had some issues. They ended up firing the studio, or taking the studio that was working on it off of the project, and I believe that was Aspire. It went back to Embracer Group, and I might be remembering some of my facts wrong, so I apologize if my information is wrong on this front. But the main thing is that this is something where there was a recent. I mean, we hadn't heard anything about it in a while. It basically had been. They had said at one point that it was being put on hold indefinitely. And then, very recently, Sony pulled the trailer from their YouTube channel. And they also pulled down the PlayStation blogs that had the links to the trailer. And they claimed that the reason for this was because they had an issue with the music license had expired, because it was using licensed music, actual Star Wars official music. Oh yeah, they had also pulled tweets that were up on Twitter about it. So basically, they were kind of scrubbing their timeline from it, but they still claimed that it was because of the licensed music, and I don't buy it. But more recently, we've gotten some information to where Jeff Grubb of Giant Bomb Podcast, who's industry insider, usually has some good information, said that he's spoken with someone who's at Sony, and they basically said that no one is working on this game anymore. That it's just essentially stopped production. There is a slight flip side to that Jason Schreier, who's well known as a journalist who often gets inside information on stuff that's going on, and his stuff is almost always correct. The information that he's gotten from a source at the developer it's Saber Interactive that's working on it. That's supposed to be working on it now. That's what it was. So it was originally Aspire. They got pulled off of it. Saber Interactive took over. And Jason Schreier's contact at Saber has told him that they're still working on it. So... what are your thoughts on this thing? I mean, it's...
it's as we've discussed this before, it's been a big mess. I mean, it's been a mess all around, with both the original one releasing on the Nintendo Switch and with the remake. And I don't know, because especially considering the fact that both people have inside sources, it's really hard to tell. I mean, granted, if it's with Saber Interactive, that's someone who would be working on it, and I would be more inclined to believe that they would have more information about what's going on than, say, working with Sony. But granted, it's a Sony exclusive game, so Sony would, or they should know about what's going on. But as you said, Sony also was wiping tweets because they said it was a license issue. But granted, I honestly, I don't know how I should feel about this. I don't know which I would say is the correct or which is the more likely scenario. I guess it would be nice if the game was still actually being in production. Granted, I don't know if, because of all these problems that have been going on, if the game will, if it is still in production, if it will suffer because of that, if something might be cut or if something might be drastically reduced or something along those lines. So if the game is still in production, great, but if it is, the game should still be, there should still be 100% being put into this game. It shouldn't be something that is being just half-hearted. If it is, then just let it go. It definitely sucks, especially for people who've really been looking forward to this game for a long time and have wanted a remake. So on that end, that's the only reason why I would say, because I think that having something that's put out that would not be great, having that be canceled is a whole lot better than putting out something that would be mediocre. So if the game is still in production, great. Just make sure it's phenomenal. If not, then just put it on the shelf and call it a day.
Yeah, there's a theory out there that the way that would explain why these two different stories don't line up is that essentially Sony is kind of pulling away from it, but that the people at Saber Interactive are continuing to work on it with the hopes that someone will pick it back up. And I mean, whether or not that's accurate, I don't know. I mean, it's just a theory, and it's not even my theory, so I'm not taking credit for that. But that's an interesting possibility. Some people have thrown out the idea of Xbox being the one to, Microsoft being the one to come in and basically take the project and fund it and everything else, and they certainly have the resources. Hopefully, they would actually give it the necessary guidance it needs to be what it should be, because the information we got before of some of the main story writers or whatever was very concerning. Not the kind of person you want touching this game at all. You don't want them anywhere near it.
Yeah.
But I'm very much inclined to. I don't believe Sony when they said that it was just about the licensed music, because there's any variety of different ways that they could have worked around that. And it'd be one thing if they were just pulling the trailer, but the fact that they're pulling a bunch of other stuff as well, that basically all references to it. I mean, I know that some of it, yes, it links back to the trailer, but the problem is that there hasn't been any indicator that they're going to bring it back. And the other part of this is that I don't believe them when they say... I don't believe for a second that they would have let the licensing run out on this. That's an oversight that, while it's technically possible, you would think that they would have their ducks lined up properly for something this big. Unless they had, this bad situation come up. We'll wait and see what happens with it, but I'm definitely more of the opinion that this is essentially dead. Or at least it's dead for now. It may come back in the future, but I don't have any real faith in it. And as much as I would love to see Knights of the Old Republic get a faithful remake, particularly just one that, more than anything, it just needs the visuals fixed, because the visuals have not aged well for the original game. Everything else about the game is fantastic. I mean, the music, especially the voice acting, the story is incredible. The game, the combat, I think, is still great. All of the various RPG mechanics that they have present within there are great, and I still maintain, at least of all the Star Wars stories I've experienced between movies, books, shows, I still think that Knights of the Old Republic has probably the best story, even if the ending itself was extremely underwhelming. But the story itself was exceedingly good. And did you ever play the original Knights of the Old Republic?
I haven't. I bought it. I bought it as a bundle, but I haven't touched it so far yet.
Okay.
But I've definitely heard a lot of good things about it.
Yeah, it's well worth your time. I mean, I can't remember how long it took me the first time I played through it, but it's well worth your time. And at least the Switch version, as well as the mobile version, which unfortunately doesn't work on a lot of phones. It actually would probably work on yours because yours is an older phone. But that's the only version that's actually in widescreen. The PC version isn't. There's probably a mod by now that fixes that. I mean, I'm sure there has to be. But at least when I originally played it, there was not mods to fix the resolution and such. but it was still great. So, yeah. So we'll see what happens with all that. But speaking of Sony, we got official confirmation that The Last of Us Part 2 Remastered is indeed a thing. Now, the one thing I forgot to look up on this, I'm actually just going to bring this up real quick, is what the actual price is if you're just buying it fresh. Okay. Now, they did say that if you have the PS4 version, you can upgrade to PS5 for $10, which is great. It's great that they're doing that, even if I still think this is completely unnecessary as a remaster. But I know that they're adding some additional features, including a roguelike mode, which I thought they already had a permadeath mode, so I'm not really sure what the point of this is, or if it's basically just maybe it's The Last of Us 1 had the permadeath mode, and that Last of Us 2 did not. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think I know, or rather it's that I don't know, that pretty much confirms something for me, because I don't think that I ever saw it specifically announced, which I think might be because they haven't announced it, because they're afraid of saying it's going to be $70, which is why they've also just been hyping up saying, you know, if you have the PS4 version, you can get it the remaster for $10.
Yeah, at least looking on Best Buy, they do not yet have the ability to buy that, or to pre-order it. So yeah, they don't actually have a price for it yet, which means that it's probably going to be $70 new. Yeah. Of course. Oh wait, no, never mind. I'm looking at the wrong game. At first, I was going to say, you know, the Horizon is only $60, but then I realized that Horizon, that's just the current gen version that's, you know, been discounted because it's cheaper now. I mean, you know, because it came out, what was that, last year? Yeah, last year. So, but yeah, there's nothing listed about Part 2. I mean, I guess on the plus side, if you wanted to, someone who has a PlayStation 5 could always just buy the PS4 version, which, you know, like currently is $40. You probably could even find a better deal than that, and then just pay the $10 upgrade fee, which could theoretically, you know, save people some decent money. But anybody who's buying it from scratch, who wants to have that PS5 case, which I'm sure a lot of people, that's going to be what they want, they're probably going to be spending $70. But let's look at what the actual features are that are involved with this remaster. So, alright, so I'm reading from the PlayStation blog here. Last of Us Part 2 Remastered is designed to let you dig deeper into both its development and mechanics. Chief among these is a brand new mode called No Return, a roguelike survival mode designed to let prayers prove. That might be this week's title. To let players prove their mettle in randomized encounters and experience The Last of Us Part 2's combat in a fresh experience. Randomized encounters, interesting. This mode, okay, so this is actually, this roguelike mode is not the story. It's a separate, it sounds like it's basically a horde mode. Like a roguelike horde mode. That's all it is. Because, and that would make a little more sense, rather than having it be just straight up a permadeath, because I was pretty sure they already had permadeath. I mean, they even had permadeath in at least in the PS4 version of Last of Us Remastered, which is the one that I played. I know they had a permadeath mode, I'm pretty sure. I'd have to check my case, but I don't play that. No, that's not for me. Anyway, this mode includes a host of playable characters to choose from, some playable for the first time in the Last of Us franchise, which you may have spotted in our trailer. They each come with their own traits to suit different playstyles. Players will chart their course on each run, choosing between various stealth and combat encounters that will pit you against a range of enemies with unique twists that can add new, unexpected factors to any given encounter. Each run will offer a chance to decide what rewards you get after each encounter, how you spec out your character, and more. Unlock more characters, skins, and more as you progress to use in the mode. Customize your own runs and compete. I cannot talk tonight. On a global leaderboard as part of a daily run. We're excited to share more about No Return as we get closer to launch. So, one thing I will say, I'm pretty sure if I remember correctly, roguelike is permadeath. Once you die, you have to start over from scratch. Roguelite is what Hades is, where you start from scratch, but you maintain upgrades and that sort of thing. Other than the ones that you get randomly throughout the run. Am I correct on that?
I don't think, or at least from what I understand, permadeath isn't in roguelikes.
Okay.
I know there's some difference. I think that one of the bigger differences that is with roguelites, you lose less, so there is more of a chance to permanently keep upgrades or something like that. But I mean, you can do that with roguelikes, but you don't. You get to lose them less. So I'm trying to think of a good example, because I've played several roguelikes and several roguelites. So I'm trying to think of like what a good example would be. Like I
know Dead Cells. Which one is that? That's roguelike, right?
Yeah, and like for example, Rogue Legacy, that one I think is roguelite.
Okay.
Risk of Rain, I'm trying to remember if that one is roguelike or roguelite, because I know that it's one of the two, but I can't remember it specifically. But I mean, I guess technically in a sense, well, no, I'll say technically in a sense, if you die, it is permanent, but it's really just you permanently lose whatever items you have, but you could still continue or play on from what you have. It's just because, like, for example, Returnal is rogue. I thought it was roguelike, but I almost thought I saw somewhere that it was advertised as roguelite. So, unfortunately, sometimes the two blend or just get used one way or the other, that it has caused some confusion. But I think that in general, though, I think that either way, permadeath won't be necessarily a thing, and it will be something that you'll still just be able to continue on, and eventually you might have to work harder for it, because there are certain items that are, or certain abilities or stats you can get that you have to work hard to, because they are harder to unlock and achieve and make them permanent, but you can get those sort of things in a roguelike as you would with a roguelite.
Okay.
Yeah, it's something I would have to look more into, because
that's fine. I figured you would probably know more about that, since I think you do more indie stuff than I do. So, and I pretty much avoid that genre for the most part. Like the extent of what I've actually played is Hades, which I played quite a lot of, and then a little bit of Dead Cells, but I fell off of that once I got my copy of Dark Souls Remastered and never really went back to it. So. Anyway, going back to the PlayStation blog for the rest of the explanation. For those who have already played The Last of Us Part 2, we know the included sections featuring a playable guitar were a favorite for many, and you burgeoning rock stars impressed us with your performances. So we've introduced a new guitar-free play mode, which will let you strum the strings across a host of unlockable instruments. Use audio effects pedals to modulate your performance, and play as different characters in several in-game locations to customize the mood and feel of your set. And for both new and returning players interested in learning more, we've designed Part 2 Remastered to offer a comprehensive dive behind the scenes of how our studio brought this game to life. A new set of lost levels in Part 2 Remastered allow players a unique chance to check out some playable sequences previously cut from the game. These aren't fully finished levels, but rather early development slices that not only let you see some new glimpses of Part 2's world, but also include embedded developer commentary to give them richer context. Explore these spaces and hear directly from the team about the intention of aspects of each level. This is a unique inclusion for our studio, and we're excited to allow players a glimpse into the creative process. So, I will say one thing. The lost levels thing, initially, I thought that it was basically they were just including additional story content with the game, and now I see that it's basically just you get to check out some stuff that we ended up cutting out that's unfinished. And I could see how someone who really loves this game would be into that. Personally, because of how much I despise the story of this game, I would not be interested. But I wouldn't buy this anyway, so there's that. Here, they've also included newly recorded director's commentary across the campaign's cutscenes from Neil Druckmann, narrative lead Haley Gross, or Haley, I guess it's probably Haley Gross, and actors Troy Baker, Ashley Johnson, and Laura Bailey. They assembled to offer insight into the story and its characters that means so much to both our team and our fans, and we're delighted to give fans even more understanding of the team's approach to the story. Last of Us Part 2 Remastered will feature enhanced graphics, including native 4K output. There's a note there. What's that? I gotta see what the note is here. Just you have to have a 4K TV or display.
Oh, okay.
Where is it? In fidelity mode, 1440p upscale to 4K in performance mode, an unlocked frame rate option for TVs that support variable refresh rate, increased texture resolution, increased level of detail distances, improved shadow quality, animation sampling rate, and more. Brings all the world of Part 2 story to life in richer and smoother detail from the snow-swept mountains of blah 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 blah. Part 2 Remastered takes advantage of the PS5's power and features in more ways as well, including improved loading times. It incorporates DualSense wireless controller haptic feedback and adaptive triggers to better immerse you. Still has all the accessibility stuff, which some of that's actually really cool. They actually have they have a mode where you can play if you're blind. Which I just think that's a cool idea to do that. I mean, so I'm going to go off on a slight side tangent. I have heard people say that accessibility means that they should add an easy mode to games like Elden Ring, Sekiro, that sort of thing. Personally, I say no, that's not accessibility. That's just you're trying to take a game that's supposed to be hard and make it easier. That defeats the purpose of playing of these games. You need to play them on the hard difficulty because that's how they're designed. That's how they're meant to be played. If a developer decides that they want to make a game with multiple difficulties, then by all means. But these games are they're very specifically designed to be hard, to be frustrating, and to be the kind of games where when you overcome that challenge, you're really happy that you did. But that's not accessibility. That's something different entirely. Whereas something where they're making it possible for people who are blind to play a game that otherwise would be impossible for them to play, or nearly impossible, would be extremely difficult. I think that's just cool. I think like I have to give them credit where credit is due. I think that's cool that they're doing that. But everything else, I think it's Like, okay, they're adding some features, and obviously for people who love this game, it'll probably be worth the $10 upgrade fee. But of course, the one notable thing is that if you want the physical version, if you want that PS5 case, you're not going to be getting it for $10. You're going to be spending full price for it. They have a steelbook version, which of course I'm a big fan of steelbooks, but steelbook version with like some trading cards basically that are related to the game, probably stuff that you normally collect in the game, and some pins and a patch. All, reasonably cool stuff, but I guarantee you the people who are really into this game, they're going to be buying the physical version. They're not going to just spend the $10 upgrade fee. And that's how they're going to milk this game to those fans. And I won't be spending anything on this because even though it will probably come to PC not long after, because it's coming January 19th, 2024 to PS5, I imagine it probably won't be super long before they release it on PC as well. It could end up being only $60, but I want to say that The Last of Us Part 1 was $70 when it came out. I could be wrong on that.
For PS5, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. It was 70 on PS5 and 60 on PC.
Okay, so it was 60. All right, so it may actually come at 60 to PC. We'll see what happens, but yeah. No. And I do want to say, and I'm sorry I've been talking so long, I haven't even given you a chance to talk, but I hate so much what they did with The Last of Us Part 2. People who hated the character of Abby should never have gone after the voice actress, Laura Bailey, who is actually a fantastic voice actress, lovely woman. There's no reason to go after people just because you don't like the character that they play. That's stupid. Get a life, please. Find something else to do with your time. And I mean, believe me, I vehemently hate this game. I mean, like, I have no doubt that the gameplay itself is great, other than forcing you to play as a character that nobody wanted to play as. But it, like, story-wise, I just hate it. I even know people who, they are hardcore Last of Us fans, and they have said that they hated Last of Us Part 2's story so much that they, as far as they're concerned, there was no Part 2. Part 1 was it. So, that's hardcore Sony fans, hardcore Last of Us 1 fans. I am neither. But I enjoyed the story of Last of Us 1, and I do not think, knowing what they did with Part 2, that Part 2 should exist. Or at least that they should have done something completely different. But at least they actually had the balls to kill off a character instead of just having them retire. So we'll not go back.
Oh gosh.
That.
Oh gosh. I really just got it.
Yeah. All right.
Took me a second.
So, all right, go ahead and give me your thoughts because I talked way too long on that.
Well, all those things that they put in the game as a bonus, and they didn't have the decency to give us a golfing mini game, But yeah, the rumors definitely were true. I wish that the rumors weren't true, because all the games that Sony could be giving us, and sure, they're adding a couple things into it, but still, they could have. There are other games that were more deserving of well, even if you were gonna say a remaster, than this game. I mean, there were a lot of games that could have been made, and I felt like they put all these resources into this game, and mainly possibly because of the fact that Last of Us Season 2 is coming out whenever it is,
Right.
and so this is just hype, and they're trying to get on that Last of Us hype train. And that's really infuriating me because of that. But I want any game, any other game, and sure, and even with the fact that they've made this game, it's coming out. This is gonna be the one time where I ask Sony to just keep that PlayStation exclusive, okay? You know, PlayStation fans, you can have this one, okay? You know what? The PC gamers will take our L and not bask in the glory of The Last of Us Part 2, okay? You know, we will long for it from the shadows and just say we wish we could have it, but we were not deserving of it. So you guys can have that. That's fine. I keep that. We don't need that. How about in exchange you give us Bloodborne Remastered? How about that? But I do think though that the game will be $70. They made Part 1 $70 on PlayStation 5. The fact that they haven't said how much this one will be, but keep saying, "Oh, it's only $10 more if you have the original version."
Right.
That's you're really just trying to cover the fact that it's gonna be $70, and you don't want people to, you know, have backlash, express backlash over the fact that it's going to be another $70 gimmick for a game that came out last generation. You might have a couple
3 years
new
ago.
features. Yeah, a few years ago at that. You're going to charge $70 for that, and I don't think that it's worth it. I mean, sure, for $10 more, if you own the game as an upgrade, I can hear that argument. But to put it out brand new for $7, that's asking too much, in my opinion.
Right.
I would not touch that. Granted, I wouldn't buy this game for $20, but yeah, yeah, that's just how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is that Sony knows that the people who actually liked this game will probably buy it full price again. I mean, there will be some people who at least have the sanity. Well, I shouldn't say sanity, but have enough wisdom to where they'll recognize that the better thing for them to do is just spend the $10 upgrade fee, and then they get their PS5 version without having to, you know, shill out an extra $70. But the fact is that you're going to have people who really enjoy this game are more likely just going to spend the $70 so that they can get that PS5 case, or spend whatever the collector's edition is going to be, which is probably going to be like $100 would be my guess. And you know, that's what happens when you have just this type of fan base. And I mean, like, no, you know, I'm not intending to disrespect people who enjoyed this game. I don't understand why you enjoyed it, but you know, if you enjoyed it, you enjoyed it. You know, there's games I enjoy that other people don't understand why I enjoy it. It's fine. You know, that's perfectly fine. I get it. You know, we all have different tastes. I just, you know, don't like one that completely disrespects and literally kills off a character that, you know, everybody loves, and makes him make stupid decisions that don't make sense for the character. But whatever, you know, I'm not sure if what they did with that character or what they did with Luke Skywalker in The Last Jedi is worse. I think Luke is probably worse.
I would argue Luke was worse because
Luke definitely was worse.
They killed the character and then they killed him. I mean, they killed Luke in two different ways.
Right. Yeah. That's true, because the other character didn't get like emasculated and everything. He just made dumb decisions that didn't make sense, knowing the character he was previously. But anyway, that's enough of that. We've spent more time on this than we should. So let's move on into some good news, at least in my opinion. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth just recently put out a trailer where basically they just recap the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake. That is, Square Enix put out the trailer for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, recapping the story of Final Fantasy VII Remake. And at the very end of the trailer, right at the end title card, it says exclusive to PlayStation 5 with a little asterisk, and it says at least until 5/29/24. And the game comes out on PlayStation 5 on February 29th, 2024. Which means 3-month exclusivity window is all it is for the PS5 version. Now, I would have to do my research because I forgot to actually look this up. But I'm pretty sure that Remake had at least 6 months between the time that it came out on PS4 and the time that it came to Epic Games. Now, of course, my hope is that Square Enix did not make another deal with Epic Games and that it's going to be Epic exclusive for a while all over again. But if it is, then hopefully it will be a very short window, and hopefully it will only be that same 3 months that it is for the PS5. And it to be completely clear, it did only say at least 3 months, so it could technically be more than that exclusivity window goes. It's possible Sony will work something out to get a longer period, but I'm hoping that it's only 3 months and that it comes to Steam right away. I'm hoping also that it will run as well on the Steam Deck as Remake did, because Remake, the vast majority of the game runs very well on Steam Deck. It's really only when you're walking around towns, which there's no combat during that time, where it's like stuttery and annoying. And you can fix that on the desktop version. But as far as I know, unless something's changed, fixing it on Steam Deck is not, you can't do it. So you just have to deal with it. But considering most of the time you're not dealing with that in the game, it was something I could deal with just for the sake of being able to play that game portably. So, but yeah, your thoughts on the matter?
Well, before that, I wanted to mention that I did look it up. Mm-hmm. I guess technically it is 6 months if you don't count the original version of Final Fantasy VII Remake, because it was Integrate that had that 6-month gap. But technically, if you count the original version that was released, it was over a year, because that one was released on PS4 in April 2020, whereas Integrate, or at least for PC, was released in December of 2021.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, there was just that 6-month gap though between the Integrate version on PS5 and PC.
Yeah. So either way, it's
that's definitely way shorter.
Significantly shorter. So that's very good news. And even if it does do Epic Games first, which I hope Square Enix doesn't do that again, but I'll be prepared mentally. We'll see what happens, but at least it won't be as long of a wait either way. Because it was 2022 that it came to Steam. It was like June 2022 that it came to Steam, and that's over 2 years after it came originally to PS4. So hopefully it's not going to be anywhere near as long of a wait, because I'm very excited about that game. And even if it doesn't play well on Steam Deck natively, I can always stream it, and then I'll just enjoy the 120 frames per second on my desktop, and it would be glorious. Plus, it's looking great, and there's some improvements they've made to the combat and various other mechanics that are going to make the game even better than Remake was, from what I can tell. So I'm excited. All right, so now we're back. We're still on that Sony topic train, because it's been a slow news week, but this one came up. So a while ago, I believe this was last year, there was a class action lawsuit against Sony for something that was ultimately just kind of a BS reason. Basically, over in the UK, some people were wanting to sue Sony because of like unfair practices towards the consumer, in that they were charging people, or that they were charging developers 30%. I might be mixing up my things, but they were charging charging developers 30%, to have their games on their store, which is actually normal practice. I mean, that's what Steam does, probably what Nintendo does. I'm sure Xbox does the same thing. Is basically just like a stupid reason. I mean, you charge the 30% because basically Sony or any of these other companies, they're dealing with they're doing customer service on behalf of the developer. So it makes sense that they would charge them 30%. But this case has moved forward recently because of essentially because Sony has stopped selling their, and this happened back in 2019 actually, that they stopped selling digital versions of their games outside of their store. So essentially the issue is that they're having more or less a monopoly on being able to buy those digital games, whereas Nintendo, Microsoft, PC in general, you can buy keys for those games through third-party key sites. You can buy them through like Amazon. You can buy them through Walmart. Whatever. You can buy those things very easily. Get the digital versions. Get discounts and all that. But with Sony being the only place, Sony's PlayStation Store being the only place that you can buy digital versions of their games, essentially the lawsuit is saying that there being a monopoly in this, and it's at least that it has the potential to be a monopoly in the future, especially if it ever gets to the point physical games go away, and then literally the only place that people can buy PlayStation games is through the PlayStation Store. So, thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely agree that, or the initial lawsuit against developers being charged 30% was bogus when virtually every other storefront does that. That one, I think, just should be thrown out. Now, I'm not necessarily going to say that is it completely fair to lose or to be charged that much of a fee. It might not be the most reasonable thing, but I think that to have it actually be something you sue Sony specifically for, I think that's a little unfair in that sense there. As far as being the only store that you can buy games digitally, I think that definitely should be, that's definitely a good reason to sue, and definitely something that people should be speaking out against, because if that's the only place where you can buy a game from Sony essentially can control the prices. Like, if you go anywhere else for your digital games, you can get them for good prices. Even with Steam sales, you can still find keys for games that are cheaper from any other third-party site. So that's the benefit of having these key sites to buy these games from. And even though, I've seen a couple of them, there aren't as many, you can still get them for Nintendo Switch games and Xbox games. So that's definitely something that should be available for PlayStation gamers. Now, I know that a lot of console gamers might not care about buying keys or even think about that, but that's definitely something that should still be an option for them to utilize should they choose to do it. So Sony should not be, so Sony definitely should be fought against. This should be something that should be mandated, and I don't know, because this is something in the UK, if it's something that would benefit gamers globally or not. I know that at least for certain things that have been happening in UK, I know especially something with, I think, for Microsoft Windows specifically, that's something that would only impact the UK, or at least impact the European Union. So something like this, I don't know if it'll be something that would be local. I hope that it wouldn't be, so that way gamers outside of the UK, gamers in other parts of the EU, gamers in United States, gamers in Asia, wherever, could benefit from that, and so that way they could buy their games digitally from any sort of key site. So I hope that it does go through. I hope that progress is going to be made there. Again, I don't think that the 30% fee should hold up. I think that should technically be just thrown out just because of the fact that it's something that is applicable for a lot of other storefronts. So there's no case there. That's just gonna be thrown out. It should be thrown out, but definitely I hope that this one though goes through.
Yeah, I mean, like, initially when I heard about this, I thought, okay, well, what's the big deal? But then, it pointed out that we are getting to a point where eventually we're not going to have physical games anymore. And if Sony's only selling their games, or any digital games specifically through their store and their store alone, that is definitely an issue. Like, I hadn't even noticed that because it was very rare. There weren't a whole lot of games I bought on PlayStation, and when I did, like, unless it was something for Vita, for example, where I basically had to buy them digitally because the physical prices were just outrageous. Like, I hadn't even really thought about the fact that they hadn't been selling digital copies outside anymore. But as I thought about it, I realized, I mean, I've bought digital copies of, like, Nintendo games, for example, like Astral Chain. A couple years ago, I bought that from Best Buy, and it was like $40, and the physical version was basically impossible to find, at least at the time. I think now you can get it. They probably have reprints out, but it's like, okay, I can't get a physical version, and I it was a good enough discount to where I thought it was worth going for, and I bought it and played it and enjoyed it overall. But like with PC games, I mean, like, I'll buy games through Steam a lot, but sometimes I'll also go through Green Man Gaming, especially if I want to get a game like right when it launches, like Ghost Runner or Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart, at least one of the 2 Spider-Man games that I bought, several games like that where usually I could get 20% off if I go through Green Man Gaming, and if I buy it directly through Steam, I have to spend full price. I'm gonna go through another site, and there's a whole lot more competition on PC. And so it's just a matter of, okay, when there's that competition, then it benefits the consumer. But if Sony controls the prices altogether, they can charge $100 for a game, and there will be, the pay pigs who will definitely pay immediately. They'll spend $100 on a game happily without any problems. But then, anybody who's not like that, who doesn't want to spend that kind of money, they'll basically be forced to spend that money if they want to play those games. And depending on how they feel about those games and everything else, they may do it reluctantly, or they may just straight up abandon the platform. So, yeah, I don't like this, and I hope that this lawsuit goes through properly, and that Sony has to do something different. I don't know exactly how, like you said, it will affect anybody outside of the UK, but we'll take a look at this and see what happens. Definitely keep an eye on this story and all that. Any other thoughts?
No, I think we covered everything that I was feeling.
All right, so since it's getting pretty late, we're probably not going to really dive too much into the Steam sales or anything else. But before we get into our recommendations and dissuasions, are there any? Have you noticed anything within Steam sales or other sales that you want to point out to people as good deals worth your time, worth your money?
I think one thing that it'll probably drop more, but I think it's something for people who have been looking forward to playing this game and desperately didn't want to spend a full $60, would be Lies of P. That's down to, I believe, $48 as part of the Steam sale. And It's from like a lot of people have said that it's a very good Souls-like. The style is definitely reminiscent somewhat of Bloodborne, so it would be something that's closest to what we would expect. Again, you could probably wait longer and get it for a cheaper discount. I'm probably going to wait a little bit more, but I think that if it's something that you really have wanted to play and you can't wait anymore, but you didn't want to pay a full $60, that's something you could go ahead and get.
Yeah. I'm not entirely sure from my standpoint. Like I've definitely looked at some of these sales here. I ended up buying several games that were significantly discounted. I got all 3 Max Payne games because I've been wanting to get more into the other Remedy games, and I think each of them was like $4 or less. I grabbed Zone of the Enders, which is one of Kojima's PS2 games that I've heard good things about, and another game called Beyond a Steel Sky. I have Beneath a Steel Sky, which was like a really old early Windows game, and I never actually finished it. So I got through GOG many years ago, and but this is supposed to be a sequel to that, as far as I understand. And so I think at some point I'm gonna have to probably play through these. So anyway. But yeah, one game I will point to that's well worth your time, which is currently discounted 60% off, is a little indie game called Gunpoint. Really good game. It was something that a friend introduced me to many years ago. Actually, probably about 10 years ago. And actually, no, it wasn't that long ago. It was probably like 9 years ago. Anyway, the point is that it's a fantastic game. It's got a great soundtrack. I definitely recommend if you buy it with the soundtrack, because the soundtrack is great. I have included some of the music occasionally in the video versions of the podcast, so it's really excellent. It's got like that heavily pixelated 2D art style, but it's also like super detailed in a sense, and it's like it's a stealth puzzle game, and it's got like a detective story behind it. It's like a noir setting, and I don't know, it's just super good. The only thing I don't like about it, because you can go through most of the levels and you can do it without being seen or heard in the entire thing, and I got through basically every level that way, which is just, it's super cool when you're able to pull that off. But there's like, I think there's like 2 levels where it's actually impossible to do that, and it bugs me that you can't do that in, like, it's like the first level and I think maybe the last level where it's actually impossible to do that, and the rest of them it's possible to do. And it's just a super interesting game, really worth checking out. So that's the one game that I want to point people to that would be completely under your radar. I don't think it came anywhere but PC. It is technically playable on Steam Deck. I think when I tried it out, it didn't work as well with button controls, so you kind of need to use the touchpad or connect the mouse. But yeah, anyway, it's really good. It actually probably would work okay with button controls. I haven't tried doing it because I just played it with mouse and keyboard when I got it years ago. So, all right, that's all I gotta say. So let's go into recommendations and dissuasions. Start us off.
All right, for my recommendation, I am. Oh gosh, I can't believe that I had it and then I just like lost it. And the sad thing is, it definitely was something that was topical. Oh yeah, now I remember. It wasn't topical. So my recommendation is, sort of recommendation, topical because it's Sony. If you are someone who enjoys DRM-free games, earlier this week, Sony shadow dropped yet another game on Good Old Games. They dropped Uncharted Lost Legacy Collection.
Yep.
that is currently there, and it's on sale for $30. So if you're interested in buying your games DRM free, that's an option for you to get.
Definitely. Yeah, and I love the Uncharted games. They're a blast. I mean, they're not like the most unique games in the world, but those characters are really well written, and especially Nathan Drake is a fantastic character. Nolan North is just perfect in that role. Yeah, it's fantastic. It's too bad that we don't have the other three, or the 1 through 3, as well as Golden Abyss, which was the one that was on Vita. That's like a prequel. I hope that eventually they'll bring all of those over. But
like when we get those remastered.
Right. But 4 is really excellent. I have not played Lost Legacy yet. I have this collection, the Legacy of Thieves collection, on Steam. But I want to finish replaying through 2 and 3 before I replay 4 and then play Lost Legacy. So eventually I'll get back to those and see if I can get those platinum trophies, because I just enjoy the games. They're good games. All right, my recommendation is completely different. It's not video game related at all, but it is Thanksgiving related, because Thanksgiving is tomorrow as of the time of this recording. By the time you hear this, Thanksgiving will already be over. But my recommendation is a Thanksgiving leftovers sandwich. So I came across this recipe a number of years ago. It's super simple, and bear with me because part of it is going to sound odd, but it's incredibly delicious. So you take any bread, doesn't matter what you're using. It could be rolls left over, wine rolls, crescent rolls probably would work just fine. You could even do this on tortilla. Put some mayo down. Then you do some of that leftover turkey. Then you do some cranberry sauce. And then stuffing. And it does work with cornbread stuffing, but I think in general using the regular kind of stuffing that you would have in a turkey, or separate if you don't like it that wet. But just put that all together and it's like, it's so good. So good. It's like incredibly good. You just got to make sure you don't put too much of the cranberry sauce, because it's good, but it's not. If you put too much cranberry sauce, it can kind of overwhelm the other flavors because it's got strong flavor. So, but it's really, really, really good. And even though the mayo might seem a little weird, having that along with the cranberry sauce, they're not touching each other. So just trust me, it's fantastic. You got to try it. If you're a little afraid of it, just don't make yourself a big sandwich. Make a little, take like a little tiny dinner roll. Make yourself a teeny tiny one. Taste it. If you don't like it, you never have to try it again. But if you like it, you can thank me. Or whoever came up with the recipe. I don't remember where I found it. Oh, I think it might have actually been from the back of a stovetop box, now that I think about it. I can't remember. Anyway, it's amazing. Try it. Enjoy it. Dissuasions.
Well, I'll need to at least try a couple of the ingredients, because I've made sandwiches in the past with the turkey and the stuffing, but I've never had the cranberry sauce. So that will be something that will possibly take it to the next level.
It does. It really does. Trust me. So, okay. Your dissuasion for the week.
Dissuasion. Okay. I partially wanted to be just to say Sony don't port Last of Us 2 to PC, but my dissuasion will have to be don't. I guess this one won't be necessarily gaming related. Don't give the people working retail a hard time. They're gonna be working hard this weekend. They've got to get to the store early. They've probably got to be there early on in the night to get ready for the morning. They're gonna be tired, so be easy on them, okay, everyone. And if necessary, don't even go out this weekend. There's still gonna be some more sales going on.
Oh yeah, lots of them. Do shopping online. That's a good thing to do as well. Or wait until the dust settles and then go and take advantage of some of the sales. I mean, if you're desperate for like a new TV or whatever, then you do you. But personally, like, I just take advantage of things like the discounted movies. It's a great time to buy a bunch of discounted movies. Like, get movies for $5 or $6.
Yes.
Get some great Blu-rays, things like that. Even the 4K ones, some of them are $5 to $10 for a 4K Blu-ray. And I don't have any 4K displays or a 4K player, so I don't bother with the 4K, but I do go for the regular Blu-rays. Good deals. My dissuasion for this one. I actually don't have one off the top of my head, so just bear with me. I think I'm probably going to say my dissuasion is talking about controversial topics with family during Thanksgiving. So, whether that's specifically politics or, issues related to identity and sexuality and, religion, if that's a sensitive topic. That one I'm less against personally, obviously, but just try to have a good time with your family, and I want to dissuade you from bringing up topics that are just going to make each other mad. So it's kind of like a combination dissuasion and recommendation, because it's good to spend time with family. As someone who was apart from most of my family for many years, because we all moved to Alaska, but in the end, it was only myself, my wife, and our kids that were still there for many years before we finally moved. Just try to make sure that you're not getting into things that are going to make you mad at each other, and just talk about good stuff, and talk about stuff that you're thankful for. That's another thing, I mean, there's obviously so many things we can talk about that we're thankful for. Certainly, for both Justin and I, our faith is a huge thing that we're thankful for. And I know for me, I can talk about my family, my church, various other things. But, like, I'm thankful even for this podcast and for getting a chance to, meet Justin, who is someone that, like, I feel like we have a good rapport between us. I mean, we basically only met each other like a couple months ago. Well, I should say we only like officially met each other a couple months ago. We've technically been talking for several years, because we met through his videos on YouTube, where I started commenting on his videos, and then he started coming to my 24-hour live streams and talking to me a bit there, and then we finally like actually connected and started this podcast. And I'm loving it, because it's a great outlet for that, and I don't have the time to put together a bunch of videos every week, or even just consistently put a video out, but I can take all of that and have a chance to talk with someone about it, someone that I actually really like and like hanging out with and everything, but at the same time also have the opportunity to just talk about this topic, because you don't always have that outlet, and then also have the chance to put together something that I'm passionate about, which is making a video where I get to spend some time editing things and adding video game music that I love, because I listen to a lot of video game music. And I don't know, it's just this has been a great experience so far. We're technically 10 episodes in, or 9 episodes, I guess 9 episodes in, even though this is only episode 7 because we had the 2 messed up episodes. But yeah, just enjoy this holiday. Obviously, you guys, anyone who's listening is not going to hear this until after Thanksgiving, but still, just take some time to enjoy your family. Do that. Anyway, I said enough. So, any other thoughts before we completely close out for the night?
No, sir. I think that was a very, very good point you made there.
All right. Well, where can people find you?
You can find me on my channel. I am Xeracon. That's IAM XERACON. youtube.com/@IamZericon. I have an idea for a video I'm gonna do. I'm not certain yet, so I'm not gonna say what it is, but if I do make it, then it should be coming out soon, hopefully.
All right. Well, you can find me at youtube.com/@thefrozengamer87. My content is sporadic, of course, and more often than not, it's going to be live stream related. I'm putting more energy into this channel, the Orange Box Podcast, than anything else from that standpoint, but you will occasionally find me just randomly deciding to live stream. I'll probably do some during Christmas break, but definitely make sure to check out Justin's channel, I Am Zericon. Well worth your time. Puts out good stuff. Always thoughtful discussions, and gets me thinking about things, because I don't always agree with him on everything. He's sometimes more harsh on some things than I am, but not like he's not like the kind of person where, well, I mean, if you've been listening to the podcast, you know what he's like. So you've already gotten a good idea of that. So you'll get more of the same thing minus me, which makes it better. So it's already good stuff and well worth checking out his stuff. So until next time, we are the Orange Box Podcast. And I messed up my order there, but until next time, do not, and I repeat, do not start a sentence if you don't know where it's going. Orange Box Podcast, out.